Hello and welcome to Unacademy, a one-stop destination for the English medium civil services aspirants. Welcome to the most comprehensive Hindu analysis on YouTube. First, let's begin our discussion by looking at the topics that we are going to discuss. From the Delhi edition of the Hindu, I have chosen 8 important articles, and wherever necessary, I'll be integrating the relevant PIB press releases into the discussion. So we will go beyond the Hindu newspaper articles and cover these 8 topics comprehensively. Along with that, I'll cover a few additional PIB press releases which could be relevant, especially for the prelims exam. The idea is to ensure that you don't have to go back and read the newspaper again. But before we start, I have a very important announcement. Those of you who are preparing for 2027 and beyond, if you're looking for a structured guided program, then Unacademy is launching the Elevate batch from the 1st of July. Unacademy had provided the lowest price ever along with the triple treat offer to enroll into this program. And this offer was supposed to expire yesterday. But based on demand from students, this offer has now been extended for a few more days. And this triple treat will not only give you access to the lowest price ever, it will also give you double validity and CSE assure guarantee. Under double validity, if you avail a 6-month subscription, you will get 6-month subscription free. And the same for 9, 12, and 18 months. Under CSE assure guarantee, you will essentially get an additional attempt. Let's say you don't clear your exam in the first attempt despite your best effort, then your next attempt is on us. So if you're interested to enroll into this program, you can subscribe at just 16,999 and please check out the details in the link provided in the description box below. On the subscription page, you will see a different price. But to avail the discount, you have to enter the code IAS English. With this, let's get started and look at the first article. On page number 6, there's an editorial related to the deadly earthquake that occurred in Venezuela. In yesterday's session, we spoke about this topic, but today, this editorial offers us lessons in disaster preparedness, the lessons that India can draw and inculcate into its disaster management program. So, just for context, Venezuela was hit with the earthquake doublet, or also known as the seismic doublet, which refers to the back to back earthquakes that hit the northern coast of Venezuela. A 7.1, 7.2 magnitude quake, which was immediately followed by a 7.5 magnitude quake. And if you look at the kind of damage it has caused in the capital, Caracas, in the La Guaira province, extensive damage has been reported with hundreds of buildings collapsed. The death count already crossing 1,000. And experts are estimating that the death count could easily cross 10,000, making it one of the most horrific disasters in recent times. In 2023, the earthquake in Turkey and Syria had led to a death count of more than 55,000 people. So these incidents that occur across major seismic zones, it serves as a wake-up call for India as well. Now, first, let's look at the geological perspective here, because the editorial also refers to this. See, generally, a country like Venezuela is not used to such high intensity earthquakes. Though it sits on an active fault line, it is vulnerable. It does face the hazard of earthquake. But witnessing such high magnitude earthquakes is quite rare. It's an aberration. Why? That's because the Caribbean and the South American plate that interact over here, they have a very different kind of interaction. When you look at the Pacific Ring of Fire that stretches across the Pacific region from Japan towards South Pacific to the Americas region, across the Pacific Ring of Fire, you have multiple subduction zones and where the tectonic plates subduct and dive under each other, converge with each other. But compared to such subduction, the interaction happening between these two tectonic plates is slightly different. They actually grind past each other, slide past each other, making it a strike slip with a combination of subduction convergence. So, when you have such tectonic interaction, the stress which gets built up it won't get released every now and then. This stress accumulates over generations, over decades, maybe even over a century. But once it gets released, once the rupture happens, it will trigger these high intensity earthquakes. That's why the last major earthquake in Venezuela was more than 100 years ago. Because at this fault line, the energy essentially builds up, the stress builds up over generations, decades. And once it gets released, once there is a rupture of the plates, it can send these double quakes. And when they occur in shallow depths, when the focal point is often located in a range of under 30 kilometers, it carries that devastating energy to the Earth's surface, causing widespread trembling, which can bring down most of the buildings in the habited zones. So, shallow earthquakes represent a much bigger risk, and that is something Venezuela has suffered from. So, India, which shares good relations with Venezuela, as I said yesterday, recently we had hosted the Venezuelan leader, Rodriguez. We had signed a lot of agreements. We had celebrated our close people to people relations and our economic and strategic ties. Venezuela is a key energy partner for India, given its massive oil reserves. So India has immediately reached out. The Prime Minister has already expressed the sympathy from the Indian side. And India has launched a humanitarian assistance and disaster relief operation, codenamed as Operation Amistad. So please make a note of this, can be very important for prelims. Under Operation Amistad, the Indian armed forces have been mobilized. The Indian Army, along with the Indian Air Force. Two C-17 Globemaster transport planes have been mobilized. They've already taken off with a rescue team and a medical team comprising of 41 members from the Indian Army and the Indian Air Force. The Indian Army Field Hospital Unit has been dispatched with humanitarian relief materials, medicines, first aid, food supplies, water, etc., and specialist rescue teams that carry specialist gear and equipment with them, who can aid Venezuelan authorities in search and rescue operations to clear the building debris, save as many lives as possible, and provide immediate medical attention to them. So, such assistance has been provided by India. India also has dispatched two Beach Cube portable hospital units. So, what is this Beach Cube or portable hospital unit? So, the image you're looking at here is one of the sub models or sub modules within the larger Beach portable hospital unit. It stands for Bharat Health Initiative for Sahyog, Hita, and Maitri. It's part of India's Arogya Maitri initiative. If you remember, during COVID-19 pandemic, India provided free vaccines across the world, engaging in medical diplomacy or vaccine diplomacy, which was named as Vaccine Maitri Initiative. So, building on the success of this initiative, India has launched Arogya Maitri Initiative, where India will assist other countries in the form of medical support, aid, medical supplies during times of disasters or during other emergencies. So, this indigenously developed modular portable hospital equipment, right? It's essentially a tent like structure comprising of all the medical gear that is required to provide immediate care and attention right in the zone where a disaster has occurred or where a war or a conflict is taking place. It has the diagnostic tools, it has its own power supply. These are waterproof tent facilities with almost ICU like medical equipment available. So, even life saving surgeries and procedures can be carried out. Up to 200 plus people can be treated in one major beach queue, which consists of many such submodules within it. So India has provided this to Maldives, to Ukraine, and now we have dispatched this to Venezuela as well. So this can be used within India as well whenever disasters occur or during wars and conflicts or in forward areas in the border locations. And we are providing it free of cost to other countries. And this is part of our medical diplomacy under Arogya Maitri initiative. Now, coming to the disaster management lesson, India is one of the most seismically prone countries. There are multiple zones which are highly prone to earthquakes. But what is really shocking is that last year an attempt was made to revise the earthquake zonation standards and to impose better construction standards and building design to make our buildings and infrastructure earthquake resilient. But following a major backlash and opposition, the government has withdrawn this notification. So that is something we need to understand. We need to study India's hazard and vulnerability map and the zonation standards of earthquake. What was the previous zonation? What was the new zonation that was brought out? Why there was opposition against it? Why did the government withdraw that? That is something we'll discuss in the next few minutes. So this is the current and the previous earthquake zonation of India, right? NDMA working with India Meteorological Department and other concerned stakeholders, including Geological Survey of India, ISRO, and the others. The NDMA has brought out the hazard vulnerability map of India, and it is classified into these zones, zone 2 to zone 5. Now, when you look at zone 5, which is, of course, the most hazard prone, you have some pockets in the Himalayan belt, in the Jammu Kashmir, Ladakh, Himachal Pradesh, Uttarakhand region, some parts of the Terai belt, the entire northeast region, the entire Andaman Nicobar Islands as well, right, which basically lies right next to the Pacific Ring of Fire, and the Bhuj region in the Kutch Peninsula of Gujarat, falling under the highest risk category of Zone 5. So, according to the zonation, building standards and codes would be enforced by the local bodies and the authorities. So, last year, a new zonation map was introduced. This is how the new zonation map would have looked like. It introduced a new zone, Zone 6 was added. Previously, we had only Zone 2 to Zone 5, but in the new zonation standard, a new zone was introduced, Zone 6. And you can see in the map that almost the entire Himalayan stretch was brought under Zone 6. Previously, Zone 5 and 4, located over here, the Himalayan stretch and the foothills of Himalayas, was now clubbed into one new zone, a new category, Zone 6, where the highest regulatory standards and building codes would be enforced. Then the Bhuj region and Andaman Nicobar were also brought under the new zone, under Zone 6. Then, as you can see, the Indo-Gangetic Plains, which includes the national capital Delhi, coming under the Zone 5, Zone 4 categorization, this entire belt that you see across the Indo-Gangetic Plain, right, would also have very high and strict zonation standards and building codes. Now, this was notified in 2025. It was based on the Earthquake Design Code of the Bureau of Indian Standards, based on the updated IS 1893-2025 standards. In fact, this had been a ongoing project for a number of years. The Bureau of Indian Standards was working with all the other stakeholders to revise the earthquake zonation standards of India. After years of effort, years of consultation and technical work, finally the new standards were brought out, and based on that, the new zonation map was published and notified by the government. As I said, it introduced a new high risk zone, Zone 6, placing almost the entire Himalayan arc under it, which previously was under Zone 4 and 5. Then another important change was that any boundary town or boundary villages and cities that sit on the boundary of two different zones, they will automatically fall in the higher risk category. For example, let's say there is a town located on the borders of Zone 5 and Zone 6. Automatically, that town will fall under the standards of Zone 6, which is the higher risk category. So the focus here was precaution, to plan for disasters better, to prepare the region better, to make them more resilient by ensuring that the buildings and infrastructure and construction in these zones would be earthquake resilient. So the hazard mapping was prioritizing the geological conditions that exist and the actual risk profile that exists over administrative boundaries and administrative convenience. So this was widely applauded by disaster planners in the country, experts. They were very welcoming of this new standard, which would bring India on par with global standards followed by countries like Japan and others. But however, within a few weeks, this generated a massive backlash and opposition. Because, see, the new zonation map essentially placed 61% of India's land area under moderate to high hazard earthquake risk, which means the building standards will become more stringent. So, be it a private real estate firm, a construction firm, or a developer, or a government entity which is executing infrastructure projects, they will all have to redesign their projects, reinforce even ongoing projects, which means the cost of construction will shoot up massively. Almost 75% of India's population, according to this new zonation map, would fall under seismically active zones. And as you know, the Himalayan belt is extremely prone and sensitive as the Indian plate continues to dive under the Eurasian plate, stretching from the Pakistan Afghanistan belt till Myanmar. The entire stretch is extremely vulnerable. The whole of northeast India is highly prone. The Bhuj region has already witnessed a super earthquake, a mega earthquake back in the early 2000s. Andaman Nicobar is also highly prone. So, given the risk profile of India, this zonation standard was widely appreciated by disaster planners and experts. But as I said, the backlash and opposition came from many, many quarters, including within the government itself, even within the central government, from state governments, from local authorities, from various public sector units, metro rail corporations, for example, right? They started opposing it, stating that the construction cost will shoot up. They'll have to redesign ongoing projects. They'll have to stop the ongoing projects, redesign them, reinforce the foundation again, which will not only delay critical projects, but it will significantly increase the cost of construction as well. Very strong opposition came from the private real estate and construction industry as well. So, following this strong opposition regarding higher construction cost and the delays in ongoing projects, eventually the government was forced to withdraw the notification earlier this year in March 2026. Even the Ministry of Housing and Urban Affairs was against the new zonation standards. The National Dam Safety Authority was also opposed to it. Metro rail corporations, they were opposing it. So many public sector units as well. Since some critical projects are going on, if they are delayed by several years and the cost shoots up by crores of rupees, then many of the projects could even become unviable. The commercial viability of the projects came under question, especially real estate industry across the northern plains of India. Very strong opposition came from this region because they would basically have to halt the existing projects, reinforce the foundation again, redesign the whole building structure, and then account for the higher cost. So this would have dealt a severe economic blow to the country. Some estimates indicated that this could wipe out even 1 to 2% of our GDP per year. So, following this big outrage and backlash, the government withdrew this notification. So, now we are back to the old zonation itself. But, however, it raises an important question. Should we prioritize commercial viability and the financial consequences over safety? Because when you look at what's happening in Venezuela, the way buildings have collapsed, it's a clear lesson, it's a warning in disaster planning and preparedness. Because, see, earthquakes, if it occurs in an uninhabited area, it just remains a hazard. It will not turn into a disaster. right? In an uninhabited area, there will be no loss of life. If there are no buildings, nothing will fall, right? And there's no direct risk to human life, property, and infrastructure. But if it occurs in densely populated areas, and if your country already has very high seismic vulnerability, right, that's where the risk goes up. And especially the smaller buildings, which extend up to maybe 2 stories, 3 stories, or 4 stories, they would never follow any of these building codes, right? Even some high rises, even some government infrastructure projects sometimes violate the earthquake and building codes and standards. Local authorities fail to enforce them. So India is basically sitting on a ticking time bomb. Given the population that we have in the seismically active belt, in the Himalayan arc, and also in the North Indian plains, in the Indo-Gangetic plain, in Northeast India, right? India is just sitting on a ticking time bomb, as a large part of our infrastructure is not prepared to deal with even a 7.5 magnitude earthquake. And that is where a manageable hazard could turn into a deadly disaster. So, based on what we have discussed, take up this mains question for your answer writing practice. Now, let's move to the next article on page number 6. There's a column that evaluates the India New Zealand Free Trade Agreement. This FTA that was announced a few months ago has been recently signed in April 2026. So the India New Zealand FTA has been very much in the news, can be very important for mains and prelims exam. And very soon, the free trade agreement will take effect. It will go into force. So in this context, let's quickly evaluate the provisions of the FTA, its benefits, and the challenges in its implementation. Now, when you look at India and New Zealand, we are natural partners. Both are vibrant democracies with common beliefs, common ideals, with common security threats and strategic concerns. So we are very close partners in the Indo Pacific. India and New Zealand have a common strategic and diplomatic and economic alignment. We align closely with the allies of New Zealand, Australia, United States, Japan. So we all share the common vision for Indo Pacific. But when you look at our economic ties, it is way below the actual potential. See, India and New Zealand also have very strong people to people relations as well. We have a very strong Indian diaspora community, thousands of Indian students, workers, professionals working in New Zealand. So we do have a strong bond. But however, our bilateral trade does not reflect that potential. The total bilateral trade stands at just $1.3 billion. And out of that, India hardly exports around $700 million worth of goods to New Zealand. So there is much more potential in this relationship. India can offer a lot of goods and services to New Zealand. New Zealand can offer a lot of goods and services to India. New Zealand can drive investments to India. But however, this trade relationship has been on a positive curve, on a positive trajectory. It is in the right direction. It has been growing at 32% year on year, which is a positive sign. But definitely, there is a potential to take this trade relationship up to $10 billion and even beyond that. And that is what this FTA seeks to achieve. So, under the free trade agreement, zero duty access will be provided for 100% of tariff lines for Indian exports. So essentially, all Indian exports to New Zealand is going to become duty free. And this will translate into enormous benefits for the Indian industry. That is something we'll examine in detail. There are specific provisions to benefit the services industry of India, which is the main USP of the Indian economy. India's strength is services, be it in information technology, consulting, health, education. India has a real stronghold in services, and we get better market access into the New Zealand market. Then there is a binding commitment for New Zealand to invest $20 billion in India in the next 15 years. So this will drive foreign direct investment as well. So this is the new trend that you see in FTAs that we are signing. If you look at the FTA we signed with the EFTA countries, the European Free Trade Association, known as the TEPA, the Trade and Economic Partnership Agreement. This agreement also contains a mandatory FDI investment of $100 billion from the members of EFTA, such as Norway, Switzerland, Iceland, and Liechtenstein. So these two FTAs that we have signed in the recent times, they have a mandatory investment provision. The FTA with EFTA countries, the TEPA agreement, provides for $100 billion investment into India, and the FTA with New Zealand provides for a $20 billion investment into India. Now, these benefits will definitely help India's labor intensive sectors, especially textiles, apparel, leather, handicrafts, furniture. These sectors, they can enormously benefit. Because see, previously they were being taxed at 10%. India's exports to New Zealand, most of the products would be taxed at 10%. Now, even a 1 percentage reduction can give you a big competitive advantage over your competitors, meaning Indian goods will become cheaper, it will become more attractive, more affordable, creating a very huge market. And since it will benefit labor intensive sectors, which are in the MSME category, the micro, small, medium enterprises, it can help in job creation in the Indian economy. Then, India always protects its sensitive sectors, especially agriculture, dairy, because New Zealand is a global leader in agriculture, dairy, and animal husbandry. It produces one of the finest milk and milk products, meat, and other agro products. So, India always takes care in any FTA to protect these sensitive sectors so that we don't throw open our farmers to global competition. Be it the FTA with United Arab Emirates, or the FTA with Australia, or the trade agreement with Oman, or the trade agreement announced with European Union. All these trade agreements we have signed, they always protect the sensitive sectors, especially agriculture, dairy, animal husbandry, etc. So you find this provision with the New Zealand FTA as well. But as I said, the real standout feature is about the market access for Indian services. Indian service based industries will get preferential market access into New Zealand. Indian IT companies can kill it. They can really dominate the market in New Zealand. Same with consulting firms from India, legal and health and educational firms and tech companies. They have an enormous opportunity to take Indian services to New Zealand because of the wider preferential market access that they are going to get. But however, the success of a FTA just it does not just depend on the tariff reductions and the ease of access which is being provided. That's not the only determining criteria. See, any FTA will try to tackle tariff barriers, non-tariff barriers, that is any barrier which is not related to taxes. So just getting zero duty access or duty free access is not enough. That alone is not sufficient. Or just getting preferential treatment alone is not sufficient, right? It depends on a number of other factors as well. To what extent can Indian exporters and companies follow the regulatory requirements? To what extent Indian manufacturers can show compliance under the provisions of this FTA to fully utilize the benefits being provided? Just because there is an FTA, automatically our exports will not increase. For that, Indian industry will have to work hard. They will have to make changes to their processes, to the quality of the products. They will have to match the requirements of New Zealand's regulations. They will have to align with New Zealand's legal requirements. And this compliance requires money, requires effort, and time. Only then an FTA will become beneficial, or else it is just another piece of agreement. So, this FTA contains a rules of origin requirement to ensure that third parties, non FTA partners can't misuse this FTA route. For example, what if a third country that looks at the India New Zealand FTA route having duty free access, they try to transship their goods via New Zealand to India or India to New Zealand just to get the advantages of the duty-free access. Now that goes against the very spirit of the FTA. This is supposed to benefit only those industries which are making value addition in India and New Zealand. So strict rules of origin requirement has been provided, which means companies have to establish traceability of the product throughout the supply chain. Throughout the supply chain, there has to be compliance. They have to prove what extent of value addition is being done to the product in the respective countries. Only then they will receive the benefits of duty-free access. If they're simply packaging it from a third country and trying to show it as a new product just to get the benefits of the FTA, that is not going to work. So this requires a lot of compliance effort and alignment with the regulatory legal standards of New Zealand and as well as that of India. So that's where Indian industry will have to prioritize and focus its energies upon. Then when you look at trade facilitation measures, there will be certain certificate requirements, right? Quality requirements, hygiene standards, sanitary standards, which will have to be proved. The same applies for pharma industry. If Indian pharma products have to reach New Zealand's market, and if they have to enjoy the benefits of this FTA and get duty-free access, they will have to comply with the sanitary, phytosanitary, and hygiene standards. They will have to get the right certificates. That's when the quick movement of goods will happen. The quick clearances will be provided at customs, and that's where the full utilization of the FTA will kick into effect. So that is what the article is telling us, that just signing an FTA is not enough. You need to focus on the non-tariff barriers, how quickly the goods can move, how quickly they can be cleared. Can the industry fully utilize the benefits being provided? And for them to fully utilize, they'll have to first show compliance and match the regulatory and legal requirements. So based on this, let's look at the mains practice question. But before that, the suggestion you can provide in a mains answer is that India will have to assist the MSME sector and the Indian industries to help them comply with the FTA requirements. Let's say there is a question on any free trade agreement. Once you discuss the provisions and the challenges in its implementation, your suggestion or the way forward you provide in the conclusion should be related to this point, that Indian government, the Ministry of Commerce and Industry, and the concerned ministries, they will have to work with their respective sectors. They will have to help the MSME industry, which are small companies, work with the manufacturing firms to provide them all the support, technical, financial support, so that they can achieve the compliance requirements and the standards to be met. That is when the 100% utilization of the FTA can happen. So kindly take up this mains question. It focuses on the provisions of the FTA, the opportunities and the challenges. So we have covered all these points along with a way forward and a conclusion. Let's see how many of you can write an answer. If you do write your answers, please post them in the comment section. Now let's move to the next article related to security. Yesterday, Home Minister Amit Shah took part in the 10th apex level meeting of the NCORD. The 10th apex level meeting of NCORD was organized by the Narcotics Control Bureau, or the NCB. So Home Minister Amit Shah took part in the event. NCORD stands for the National or Narcotics Coordination Center. The Narcotics or Narco Coordination Center. It's a platform under the NCB through which Narcotics Control Bureau coordinates with other stakeholders to combat the menace of drugs, narcotics, and psychotropic substances. So through NCORD, NCB will coordinate with central intelligence agencies and central law enforcement agencies like CBI, right? For example, let's say NCB is hunting down a drug kingpin or members of a drug cartel who might be hiding abroad, who might be fugitives. So through CBI, NCB can coordinate its actions and get a red corner notice issued through Interpol, right? CBI is the liaison, the nodal agency to interact with the Interpol. So NCORD would be that platform where NCB would coordinate with other stakeholders, or it will coordinate with state governments or with Coast Guard, with Navy to intercept any drug trafficking which is happening in the maritime sphere, right? So At the apex level meeting, Home Minister Amit Shah has rolled out the vision document on narcotics control 2026-2029. Now, I will take you through these provisions of the vision document. This can be very relevant for prelims and even for mains. So, I'll integrate a press release from PIB, from the Ministry of Home Affairs, because NCB functions under the Ministry of Home Affairs. It's under the administrative control of the Home Ministry. So let's look at the vision document and its key features and provisions. The vision document on drug control. See, the Modi government has declared a target. Prime Minister Modi himself has spoken about a Nasha Mukt Bharat, to get India rid of drug addiction, to help the youth who are addicted to drugs, to provide them rehabilitation, counseling, help them with de addiction programs, and at the same time combat the menace of drug production and drug trafficking. Because, see, drug trafficking is one of the most serious criminal offenses. It's an organized crime and it shares direct linkages with money laundering, because the proceeds, the illegal proceeds of drug trafficking, eventually that money is laundered. It's black money, it's illegal wealth, right? It is laundered through Hawala networks and other money laundering routes. And it shares a direct link with terrorist financing. So these three are interlinked and interconnected. Organized crime, terror financing, and money laundering. They are interconnected, and especially narcotics. You look at several insurgent groups and terrorist organizations. They all rely on either drug production or drug trafficking or both to raise revenue for their terror and insurgent operations. Take, for example, the Naxals. They are known to cultivate drugs and even play a role in drug trafficking. Look at several Northeast insurgent groups, from NSCN to ULFA and the others. They have a history of being involved in drug trafficking and drug production, right? They have interlinkages with cross-border drug criminal cartels in Myanmar and Thailand, which are operating in the Golden Triangle. Then look at Pakistan-sponsored terrorism against India, be it the Khalistani terror outfits or the terror and insurgent groups based out of Jammu and Kashmir or in Pakistan. They all have connections with Golden Crescent region in Afghanistan, Pakistan, Iran belt. They are linked with the drug production trafficking cartels. And the drugs that reach India becomes detrimental for our economy, for our society, and as well as for our national security. That is the impact of drugs. It will hit your economy, it will destroy your society, and it will threaten your national security. That's why combating the drug menace is a national priority. So, Prime Minister Modi has declared the ambitious goal of Nasha Mukt Bharat. And that's what the vision document talks about. The vision document on drug control of NCB prioritizes and outlines the strategy. This document lays out the four pillars of India's approach. Please make a note. What are the four pillars of India's fight against drugs? One is enforcement, intelligence, and operations. Since NCB is the nodal authority, enforcing the law, it enforces important legislations such as the NDPS Act, the Narcotic Drugs and Psychotropic Substances Act, and other related legislations. Enforcing those laws, generating intelligence against these drug cartels, because most of these criminal organizations, they are transnational criminal entities. They will be operating in multiple nations, from India to West Asia to Africa to Pakistan to Afghanistan to Myanmar to Thailand. So cracking down on these networks requires effective intelligence gathering at the border areas, in the maritime domain, in foreign locations as well, if when necessary, and conducting operations to intercept these cartels, their trafficking routes, to seize their consignments and destroy the drug consignments. So India has launched a drive to destroy around 6,000 crores worth of drugs. Totally around 2 lakh plus kilograms of drugs have been seized, which is in the custody of NCB, which is now going to be destroyed as part of the campaign. And please understand the various routes through which drugs are being smuggled into India. Today, criminal cartels are using cheap commercial drones to drop the contraband on the Indian side. They are even using advanced routes and techniques, including the maritime route. They have the ability to work with human trafficking cartels. They have the ability to work with terror organizations as well, or the criminal underworld in a city, and build connections with them to smuggle the contraband into the country, either through the maritime route or through the help of human trafficking cartels. And this poses a heightened risk for India, right? So, improving your border security, stepping up intelligence gathering, improving coordination between different intelligence and law enforcement agencies is very critical for this fight against drugs. So, this is the main outline of the vision document on drug control. It identifies how narco trafficking has become linked with narco terrorism, right? The direct connection that exists between drugs and terror is what gives rise to the term narco terror or narco terrorism. Now, it's also important to learn about the NCB. This can also be important for prelims and mains. You might have seen in the last few years, there have been prelims questions on security agencies. Match the following type of questions regarding its mandate. Or it can be part of the mains exam as well under internal security, because this is part of the syllabus. In internal security, you're expected to learn about all the security agencies and forces of India and their structure and mandate. So NCB, as I said, it functions under Ministry of Home Affairs. MHA has the administrative control, and it enforces one of the DPSPs, the Directive Principle of State Policy, that is Article 47 of the Indian Constitution. Article 47 places a duty on the state to combat the menace of intoxicating drugs which are injurious to human health, to protect the country's citizens from the hazard and the impact of drugs. So, India has become a signatory to several important international conventions in this regard. Please make a note of this. There are three major conventions when it comes to drugs and psychotropic substances. We are a signatory to all three of them. We have signed the Single Convention on Narcotic Drugs 1961, which was later amended by the 1972 Protocol. We have also signed the Convention on Psychotropic Substances 1971, and we are also party to the UN Convention against Illicit Traffic in NDPS 1988. Based on this, India has brought out a law, the NDPS Act, to fulfill the commitments to these international conventions. India introduced the Drugs and Psychotropic Substances Act in 1985. We also have the Drug and Cosmetics Act that regulates drugs in the country of 1940, and the Prevention of Illicit Traffic in Narcotic Drugs and Psychotropic Substances Act 1988. So these two laws, NDPS Act and the Prevention of Illicit Traffic in NDPS Act, they help India meet our international obligations under these two international conventions. So NCB basically delivers on these commitments. It functions as both an intelligence agency and as well as a law enforcement agency. It enforces these laws. It gets the legal mandate through these laws. It can register an FIR, it can investigate the case, arrest the accused, collect the evidence, and prosecute those cases, and also collects intelligence to enable these operations. It will work closely with multiple other intelligence and law enforcement agencies, including Intelligence Bureau, Research and Analysis Wing, CBI, NIA, Enforcement Directorate, State Police, even the border guarding forces, the Navy and the Coast Guard, even the Directorate of Revenue Intelligence, the DRI, and the Financial Intelligence Unit, etc. So, this is a collective effort led by NCB with the other stakeholders to combat the menace of drugs. Now, moving on, We have an article related to the proposed amendments to the National Food Security Act. The government has proposed to amend the NFSA, which could alter the food allocation to the poorest of the poor. I'm sure you must have heard about the Antyodaya Anna Yojana, where the government provides free food grains up to 35 kilograms per household to tackle the problems of hunger, nutrition, and poverty. So the government is now proposing a major change. The Union Food and Public Distribution Department has already uploaded this draft, seeking the feedback of the public and the civil society before the amendment is introduced into the National Food Security Act. See, this is one of the biggest food security programs in the world, which helps India tackle hunger and malnutrition and protect the poor and the poorest of the poor people. So, under the Antyodaya Anna Yojana, 35 kilograms of food grains were previously supplied free of cost with no charges. Now, this was being provided irrespective of the family size. Maybe the family has only 3 people, or family could have 5 people or 7 people. Irrespective of the size of the family, each household would get 35 kilograms without any charge, and only food grains were being supplied. Now, the government is saying that this is not equitable because, see, there are many families which might have only 2 people. They also get 35 kilograms. There could be families with 5, 7, or 8 people. They also get 35 grams. So, when you take the per capita allocation, there is a clear inequity which is coming up. That's why the government says we have to change this. Instead of giving it per household, the government is now saying with this new amendment, 7 kilograms of food grains will be provided to one person with a maximum limit of 35 kilograms per household. So now what will happen? Let's say a household with only 2 people, they'll only get 14 kilograms. Household with 3 people, they'll get 21 kilograms. Household with 5 people will get 35 kilograms. That's the maximum limit. The government says this ensures more equity and better distribution to benefit the larger families and ensures per capita equity. But however, there is a big criticism against this, against the proposed change. There's a big outrage, a big protest which is coming up because this could create a new form of North versus South divide, especially the non BJP, non NDA ruled states, essentially opposition ruled states. They've already raised a major concern, and particularly South Indian states are alarmed by this proposal. States like Kerala. Because in the south of India, where fertility rates are dropping, population stabilization has been achieved, most families are nuclear families. The family size tends to be smaller. Family size will be 2, 3, 4 people, right? In North Indian states where population continues to grow, fertility rate remains higher, the family size remains large. So, what will happen? So, families in northern parts of India, in states like UP and Bihar, they will get their 35 kilograms of allocation, meaning these states will get a higher allocation. Whereas states like Kerala and others, they will see a significant drop in their allocation if it is made on per capita basis. And that is the criticism and the opposition which is coming up. Because civil society groups and activists, they were demanding 14 kilograms per person. Now the government is giving half of that. And also please remember, under Antyodaya Anna Yojana and NFSA, other essential ingredients like edible oil, pulses, they are not provided. Only food grains are provided. What will you do only with food grains? Right? The poorest of the poor, they can't afford edible oil, pulses, which are nutritious, which is essential for cooking. That's why there has been a long standing demand from activists that under the scheme, the government should include edible oil, pulses, and even vegetables, etc. But right now, only food grains were being provided. And with this new distribution model, per capita based distribution model, North Indian states will get higher allocation, South Indian states will get left behind. So this has now created a new sort of a divide, and that's why the proposed amendment is being challenged. Next, on page 11, an update from Indian economy. The government has relaxed the quality control order rules. So, what is this quality control order? See, back in 2016, the government had introduced a law based on which strict quality standards have been set as per the Bureau of Indian Standards to improve the quality of products produced by Indian industry, be it MSME industry or the large industries. The products they produce, right, they have to meet a certain quality standard. This was done to mainly protect the consumer, to ensure that consumers get products of the highest quality with no compromise on the quality standards. And this will also improve the image of Indian products and creates a export potential as well. So to enforce the quality standards, the government introduced the quality control order in 2020, under which several set of rules have been notified from time to time. For different sectors, industries, and different products, there are different sets of quality norms which they have to follow as per the standards of BIS, and they have to get BIS certification done. So today, when you buy something from the market, let's say you buy a utensil or a cooker, right? It will have a BIS certification, which means it matches that quality standard prescribed by the government, thus delivering quality products to our consumers and ensuring overall quality is maintained in the industry. But however, these quality control order rules, some of it can be very stringent, and it has become a big burden for MSME industry, especially for smaller industries. The local firms which operate on a very small scale, they'll hardly have 5, 6, 8, or 10 employees. For them, it's very hard to comply with these standards and norms because it will increase the cost of production, right? It will create challenges in compliance and paperwork, which will affect their day to day operations as well. So, from the industry, there has been a lot of opposition against it, especially from MSME industry, from the small local firms in particular. So, now the government has given a relaxation for those firms. The Ministry of Commerce and Industry has essentially allowed local manufacturing firms to buy their supplies from other manufacturers, even if the products are under Schedule 2 of the BIS standards. That is a lower standard of quality. Previous requirement was they should buy only from Schedule 1 category of products. See, in any industry, to produce a good or a product, you need a lot of precursors and intermediaries, right? You need a lot of spare parts, components, raw materials from which you eventually make a product. So, under BIS standards, you have Schedule 1 and Schedule 2. Schedule 1 has higher quality standards. Schedule 2 has slightly relaxed quality standards. So, previously, even small local firms were required to buy only such raw material and precursors which falls under Schedule 1 quality standard, which is costlier, which is expensive, requiring more paperwork as well. Now, the government has given a relaxation, allowing the local firms and MSME sector to buy from Schedule 2 product list as well, which will have a slightly lower standard. So, on one side, this might seem like a compromise on quality, but it does give relief to the small industries and the local firms which are struggling under the stringent quality standards. Next, a big development in our neighborhood, a very, very big development. The new Prime Minister of Bangladesh, Tariq Rahman of the BNP, the Bangladesh Nationalist Party, has carried out a high profile and important visit to China. See, India had reached out to the BNP before the elections in Bangladesh. We had tried to repair the relationship because historically we don't have good ties with BNP. When this party was in power in 1991 and as well as in 2001, the BNP was known for its anti-India position and pro-Pakistan position. It was often aligned with radical fundamentalist forces, including the Jamaat. So we have a love-hate relationship with the BNP. Though we have worked with this party when it was in power, we have some difficulties and problems with this political outfit. But Now, given the developments in Bangladesh, given that Sheikh Hasina and Awami League were kicked out of power following the youth protests of 2024, and given the rise of radical fundamentalist forces under the Jamaat and the radical student leaders, BNP was the next best alternative. So, when its leader Khalida Zia passed away last year, India reached out to Bangladesh. Foreign Minister Jaishankar visited the country, offered condolences as well on the passing away of Khalida Zia. And we even established contact with her son, Tariq Rahman, who came from UK to enter Bangladeshi politics and to lead the party to elections. So India had made the right moves. India had established contact with Tariq Rahman, the new leader of BNP. And once BNP swept the elections and Tariq Rahman became the new leader, India reached out to the country looking to repair the relationship which had been compromised under the interim government of Muhammad Yunus. But a lot of new friction points have developed, especially the issue of illegal migration, which has become a major political issue in border states like Assam, West Bengal, Meghalaya, and Tripura. The issue of illegal migration has also been politically exploited by political parties during recent elections in Assam and West Bengal. And following the recent state elections, the border guarding force, which is the BSF, the Border Security Force, has been using very aggressive tactics and methods to push back the so called alleged illegal migrants through a technique called push ins, where the alleged illegal migrants are not deported through the formal diplomatic route, but they are forcefully pushed back across the border into Bangladesh. Now, this will be a controversial move, right? Because, see, for formal deportation to occur, the other country has to verify their identity. We have to prove that they're Bangladeshi citizens who had entered India illegally. Without that, if you forcefully push back people saying these are illegal migrants from your country, why will the other neighbor accept them as illegal migrants? And this becomes a friction point. So, ideally, in our neighborhood, when a new leader gets elected, the practice is that they first visit India as part of their foreign visit. Before going to any other country, they first come to India. That is a symbolic message to show that this neighboring country values its relationship with India and India is their most critical partner. So India invited Tariq Rahman after he got sworn in for a visit to India. But because of the issues and the tensions and the friction surrounding the border push-ins and the issue of illegal migration and the politics in the border states, it has created some bad blood between India and the BNP government. Then we also have unresolved issues over water sharing, be it the Tista water dispute that's pending from a very, very long time because of political pressure from West Bengal, or the Ganga water sharing treaty, which is expiring in 2026. Ganga water sharing treaty was signed in 1996 under the then Sheikh Hasina government. It is expiring in December 2026 this year. So Bangladesh wants a revision of the treaty. Bangladesh alleges that the treaty favors India over Farakka barrage. Bangladesh criticizes the Indian projects such as Farakka barrage as it apparently affects water flow and creates environmental issues in Bangladesh. So Bangladesh wants a revision of the treaty and it wants a quick conclusion of the Teesta water agreement. But India has not been able to show any progress on this front. So there are certain standing issues that we have. We also have issues with how religious minorities are treated in Bangladesh, particularly the Hindu community. Or we have issues with how space has been created for radical fundamentalists who have links with terror groups and Pakistan's intelligence agencies. We have seen increased covert activity aimed at India to launch proxy wars in Northeast region. So as a result of all the friction and the tensions, Tariq Rahman has not chosen to visit India despite India sending out an invite. He chose to visit China. As I said, this is a symbolic message. The first country a new leader visits is always very, very important. It shows how China has been able to cultivate its ties with Bangladesh. Now, during this visit, there have been some big outcomes, and I want you to make a quick note. See, Bangladesh is already part of the Belt and Road Initiative of China, right? It has attracted a lot of investments from China. China has funded some key projects, including the Chittagong Port project, railway projects, bridges, industrial and power plant projects. And now China has announced a new investment at Mongla port. This was already proposed last year itself. Now it has been finalized. China would be pumping more than $400 million into the strategic Mongla port. Then, along with that, China will even set up a economic and industrial zone in Chittagong. Near the Chittagong port, there would be a huge Chinese industrial cluster which will come up, a Chinese economic and industrial zone, which will again firmly establish the Chinese presence. Plus, China is funding the Teesta Water Management Project. Now, this will have serious implications for India because Teesta is a disputed water issue between India and Bangladesh. It's the lifeline in West Bengal and Sikkim, right, before it flows into Bangladesh. So, any project on the other side built with Chinese assistance could potentially affect uh, on the other side of the border in India as well. So, China is getting directly involved in the Teesta water project, and any future resolution of the Teesta dispute could potentially involve a Chinese interference and Chinese involvement. So, these were some big developments that came out of the visit of Tariq Rahman. China, Bangladesh have also said that their relationship is not designed to hurt any third party. This was a message to India. They are sending a message to India that this friendship between them will not hurt any third party, which is essentially India. But looking at the deals and the agreements and the kind of projects and initiatives that are going to be launched, it does raise a serious risk for India. Because see, China is also building a major submarine yard, a docking yard, where up to 8 submarines can be docked. And Bangladeshi Navy hardly has around 2 submarines. So then why are they building a docking yard that can hold up to 8 submarines? Potentially, the PLA Navy could also bring its submarines and dock them, turning it into a Chinese military facility essentially to encircle India. So that fear always remains. Then, reportedly, China is involved in upgrading the Lal Monirhat Air Base. It's an old World War era defunct air base in Bangladesh. The former interim government under Muhammad Yunus had invited China, and according to reports, China is getting involved in this project. Now, the concern is Lal Monirhat is just few kilometers away from the Indian border, right? And it's just around 100 plus kilometers from Siliguri corridor. Potentially, China can set up its surveillance and exert its military presence as well, right next to India's choke point and the northeast region. So these serious concerns have emerged for India following the visit of Tariq Rahman. And also, please note, China has invited Bangladesh to join the BRICS grouping and the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. China has invited Bangladesh to become a part of BRICS and SCO, maybe as a partner country, if not as a member, right? And this again is a big development. Now, we have completed the discussion of all the big articles. Now, let's move towards the small sections and look at the prelims related articles. On the second page of the Delhi edition, there is this article referring to the massive landfill in Ghazipur on the outskirts, on the suburbs of Delhi. This is one of the biggest landfills in the country. You can see how the solid waste and garbage that is piled up over here, it reaches several stories. It goes up to even almost 100 feet and above, right? It's like a mountain of garbage that we have created. So this is one of the major landfills that is linked with very severe air pollution, water contamination and soil contamination, and as well as greenhouse gas emissions. Because such urban landfills emit a lot of methane emissions. And as you know, methane has a much higher global warming potential compared to carbon dioxide, right? And there will be hazardous toxic waste as well, which can cause air pollution. It can leach into the groundwater table, contaminate the soil and the surface water systems as well. So, a suggestion has come in from the Urban Development Minister Ashish Sood, who has directed the MCD, the local body, to take up a technique known as biomining to deal with the massive solid waste piled up at this landfill in Ghazipur. So that is what we have to learn. What is biomining? This can be a great prelims question. Biomining is a type of solid waste management technique. See, in biomining, there are two distinct types. Don't get confused with the usage of microorganisms to extract metal from ores. That is a slightly different process. But the same technique is applied for solid waste management. So, in solid waste management, the legacy waste, which is the old waste dumped many years and decades ago in a landfill, is first excavated. In a landfill, the waste is simply dumped, compressed into these huge landfills. So the legacy waste left behind from many years and decades, which is rotting away, which is not decomposing properly, which is an environmental hazard, it will be first excavated out, it will be brought out, it will be segregated and subjected to bioremediation. It will be subjected to certain microorganisms and biocultures, which have the ability to break down and accelerate the decomposition process. These microorganisms can release enzymes. Through enzymatic action, they can break down the organic matter and even some of the inorganic matter as well, accelerating the process of breakdown and decomposition. And then this can be further pushed into recycling, where certain valuables can be recovered. Like you can create compost, you can derive a fuel, the refuse derived fuel, you can reclaim the vast amount of land which otherwise was going waste, tackle the pollution and environmental concerns. So, this method is called biomining, where in a landfill, the legacy waste dumped many decades ago is first excavated, then it is subjected to biotreatment or bioremediation, where it is exposed to microorganisms and biocultures. Through enzymatic action, they break it down and accelerate the decomposition, right? And whatever remains is further segregated to be pushed for recycling, where valuables can be recovered and brought back into the economy, thus establishing the circular economy model, and also provides for a very environment friendly approach to handle solid waste management. Coming to the next article on page 11, there's an article mentioning the IMO, International Maritime Organization. It's in the news because of the Hormuz Strait. See, the IMO was helping ships navigate Hormuz after the blockade was lifted following the US Iran MOU. Now, as IMO was facilitating several vessels that have been stranded here to navigate out of Hormuz, Iran has retaliated, and you might have heard yesterday Iran has launched a drone attack targeting a commercial vessel. So, following this, the shipping traffic has again come to a halt at Hormuz and it remains risky. So, IMO is involved in this work, working with the shipping companies and the shipbuilders and the operators of the commercial vessels and facilitating their journey across this hazardous route through Hormuz. So that is the development reported in the newspaper. So this is an opportunity for you to understand what is IMO, the International Maritime Organization. It's essentially part of the UN system. It's a specialized agency within the United Nations. It was established in 1948 in Geneva. It mainly regulates international shipping and brings governments and the shipping industry together to regulate the entire global shipping industry. It is headquartered in London with 176 member states and 3 associate members as of last year. India is one of the key members of IMO. India is a very active participant as well. So what does it do? This specialized agency of the UN, it comes out with the regulatory framework for shipping. It has come out with several important international conventions as well. For example, the SOLAS Convention, safety of life at sea, to protect the seafarers and those whose lives might be at risk in sea during disasters, accidents, war, conflict, or to deal with the environmental impact of shipping. It has a convention called the MARPOL Convention, the Marine Pollution Convention. It also has conventions and codes to deal with ballast water. See, this is an environmental risk the ballast water carried by ships, they can introduce invasive exotic alien species into protected coastal ecosystems. Let's say a ship coming from South America to India, right? Along the route, it might have picked up barnacles, it might have picked up organisms from different ecosystems, which might get introduced into Indian waters when they release the ballast water, right? This has to be collected, it has to be scientifically handled, it can't simply be released into the sea. So there is a standard code maintained by IMO, which all the ships and ports across the world follow. So this is how IMO plays an important role in regulating global shipping, ensuring safety of life, or also dealing with wars, oil spills, and disasters and search and rescue operations. All of that is defined by the IMO. Now, coming to the PIB section, there's another press release from Department of Atomic Energy, which is very, very important for prelims. The Department of Atomic Energy has inaugurated the world's first hydrogen production facility based on copper chlorine thermochemical cycle, or CCTC. Through this technology, India is now producing hydrogen, basically green hydrogen, from fast breeder nuclear reactors. You might have read that recently India's fast breeder reactor at Kalpakam went critical, right? Which means we have just entered the second stage of our three-stage nuclear program. Now, the nuclear program is designed to mainly generate electricity, correct? The entire three-stage nuclear program of India is designed to efficiently utilize the limited fuel that we have and produce electricity which is clean. Now, what if the same program can give you a byproduct? What if green hydrogen can also be produced on the side? Isn't that a great advantage? So, along with our nuclear program generating electricity, we are parallelly trying to use the same technology in the process to produce green hydrogen as well. So, through copper chlorine thermochemical cycle from the fast breeder reactor at Kalpakam, the first ever green hydrogen production has been done. And this is the first such facility in the world, anywhere in the world. So, this is a big milestone. It will not only expand the nuclear energy program of India, that is electricity generation, but it creates that unique linkage where one of the byproducts of fast breeder reactors can be used to produce clean and green hydrogen through the CCTC method. So kindly make a note of this. This could be potentially important for prelims. On this note, I bring my analysis to an end. If it was a useful session and if you benefited from it, do let me know through your comments. Do press the like button and don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Thanks for watching.